Can you tell us when your ministry or your person, the shareholder, will find it fit to appoint a CEO? Based on information that I've received, the current candidate is not well enough. And when will you see to it that there is a managing board of GEBE? Just last night or yesterday and the day before, a member of parliament is calling for the temporary manager to step down. Apparently, he reinstated the human resource manager because of a verdict given by the court, but the reinstatement came with a promotion. Can you elaborate on this and tell us when would a CEO and a managing board of GEBE will be established?
Thank you, Bibi, for your question. Appointment of the managing directors of GEBE, that is something that the supervisory board of directors makes a recommendation to the shareholder, and the shareholder will then give its approval. That was done. We had a shareholder meeting, and it was decided on the CEO to appoint, and in this case it was Mr. Brooks. And then it's up to the supervisory board of directors to go through the process in terms of a contractual agreement with Mr. Brooks in this case. That process is ongoing. I had informal meetings with the chairman of the supervisory board of directors to indicate that the time has come for structurally to have management in place. I know this week, either today or tomorrow, there will be a meeting of the supervisory board of directors, and I would be expecting an update anytime later this week or early next week on that. Your second question was in reference to the reinstatement of...
Based on the court verdict that was given for the HR manager, but the reinstatement that was done on Monday came with a promotion. This person was an acting manager, a human resource manager. Today, he's gotten a position as manager.
I'm not aware of that. The only thing I know is that a verdict was handed down by the court, and that has to be respected. So in that case, I guess management there in GB now, the interim management, executed that verdict from the courts, but I was not aware of promotion or anything like that.
Another question regarding GEBE. You said you had some informal meetings with the supervisory board, am I correct?
Yeah.
Did they discuss with you when they will appoint the COO? Because that too went through the vetting process, went to the Council of Advice, and there was a back and forth there. Where are we with that?
Well, that's why they will be having a meeting either today or tomorrow, and hopefully myself and the Council of Ministers will be updated on the progress in that respect. But I can't divulge any information right now because I don't have any information. And I know for the COO, the screening by the security service is ongoing. So that's all I could say at this moment concerning that.
Are you at all concerned about the...
Maybe. At this point, we actually...
I had to repeat a question.
No. At this point, we have the third question being asked. So let's proceed. You can follow up. Okay? Let's continue, please. Andrew Dick, Daily Herald. Good morning. You have the floor.
Yes. Good morning, ministers. Minister Myers, the construction of the parking lot at Kimsha, can we get an update on that? We see that it's going. So any update on that?
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's proceeding fairly well. I did receive an email this week that there is a company that did receive a business license, but somehow the company is operating on the wrong location, and that company is operating on a location where the parking lot is intended. And there is a process ongoing now to resolve that situation. But for the rest, I think the parking lot should be completed on schedule.
Minister Jacobs, the Prince William Alexander School, any update on the construction as yet?
Good morning. Thank you for the question. Most of the projects that have been passed through Council of Ministers go through another process or continue through the process of the organization. As such, the companies involved in this project have signed off on the contracts, and so we're just awaiting the announcement of when it will commence.
Okay. And also, Minister, the study financing this year, I don't know if you get to mention anything.
No, I haven't, and that's one of the reasons I didn't go to the podium. I haven't received an update as yet. Several appeals are still pending. We do have students scheduled to leave for the Netherlands on the 31st. And for the rest, many of the others are still awaiting whatever the process requires for them to be able to make their final plans. So I haven't received the total count as of yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Leader Singh, Daily Herald, you have the floor. Good morning.
Thank you, Cedric. Good morning, Ministers. Minister Myers, you mentioned that there was some issues, I believe, with Parcel 13 in the bidding process. Can you give an explanation as to what the issue is exactly and when the bid will be done for that?
Well, the advice from the evaluation committee was that there could be some misinterpretation in terms of the works, the responsibilities of the garbage collector, and number two, the responsibilities for the district cleaning. That was one. And the second part is that Phillipsburg is one of the smallest parcels, and the bids that were submitted for that parcel was, in comparison with the other parcels, way out there. It was way high, and the suggestion then of the evaluation committee was that we review that thoroughly and to avoid any misinterpretation or anything like that in that sense, that we take a closer look at it and retender Parcel 13. But one was the overlap, possible overlap between the garbage collectors and the district cleaning, and number two, the pricing was way out of whack in comparison with the other parcels.
Thank you. Minister Gibson, we're now in the 7th month of the year. The first quarter, we had some fallbacks. You had anticipated that in the second quarter, the amounts of revenue would have picked up. Can you say now definitively that indeed that the amounts are better? Revenues?
Yes, I can say that. I think we had addressed this before. The first 3 months showed an alarming reduction in collection of revenue. That recuperated in the next quarter. I also mentioned that we also spent less than we had projected, and that the net result at the end of the second quarter was that we were more or less exactly on target in terms of the budget. What the situation is going to be in the third quarter, the jury is still out, but I have no reason to believe that the same trend will continue, and that we will also be on target. But that's a guess that I'm making it now. I have no reason to believe that it will not be.
I was deceived about the nature of my job. I was abducted and sold. All my documents were confiscated and money was withheld from me. I was isolated and confined to one area. I was forced into prostitution. I was forced to lie to authorities and my family. Now that you know, what will you do?
You can help by calling the National Reporting Bureau on Human Trafficking at 542-1553 or send email to naticotip@gmail.com. Human trafficking and exploitation. Please report it.
Are you at all concerned about the continuous outages that the Dutch side is facing? And do you believe that it is time to at least have a temporary management in place while the screening process is taking place?
According to me, there is a interim temporary manager in place in the form of Mr. Zegers. I definitely am concerned about the constant power outages. That is the discussion I had. According to me, the supervisory board and management at GB gave a press conference to that effect. I invited them to my office and I heard firsthand the issues they are facing with. Some months ago, I took a tour at the power plant at GEBE. I must say, during that visit, I got a lot of respect for the workers there at GBE with the conditions. I mean, sometimes when they have to maintain those engines, you're looking at 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit working conditions they are working under there. So I must commend them. Definitely, they are working hard. But it has to do with poor planning. The lifespan of an engine at one of those engines at GEBE is 25 years. Of the 19 engines right now in service, I would say about half of them are older than 25 years. So the maintenance of those engines is very time consuming, and that's where the problem is. When those engines need to be maintained and rehauled, they go over to load shedding. And there's where we have the power outages and things. So I indicated to them that before the 15th of August, I want to see a proposal on renewable energy. There have been enough talk about solar panels and so forth, and I want to see GB making some investment in that area as well, and not only on the acquisition of fossil fuel engines, those heavy fuel engines, but also in renewable energy. So one of the things that I propose that if we could put solar panels, cover the parking areas here on the pond field, that probably will produce enough electricity to service the Phillipsburg area. And then, because I think it's unacceptable, we are a touristic island, that in the middle of the day, Phillipsburg is suffering from power outages and things. So I indicated to them that before the 15th of July, I want to see a concrete proposal. The 15th of August, I want to see a concrete proposal on moving towards renewable energy.
Thank you, Minister Myers. I now move over to Minister Gibson. Minister Gibson, I'd like to make a statement before I pose my question. I must first commend you for wanting to to encourage our young minds, our young people, to go beyond the sky, the clouds, and to reach the sky. And that I'm speaking about your initiative on having a law school on St. Martin. However, while we're going to try to invest and get these students to go further their education, especially in law, how do you suggest they find work? I know of at least one student that has 3 master's degrees in law, criminal law, constitutional law, and I believe some other law. I can't remember exactly, but I know there's 3 master's degrees. That person applied with government to get a job. I think it's administrative law. And up until now, they haven't gotten any response whatsoever as to whether or not there is any job vacancy in the legal affairs department. So while we are trying to educate our students and to get them above ground, I'm asking you, how do you propose that, or how do you believe you can get them jobs when they're finished?
First of all, and I refer you back also to the presentation that was given by the IMF, that one of the vulnerabilities that St. Martin has is skilled human resources. So that's a given. That's a fact. We do not have sufficient skilled human resources in government, and the private sector is seeking them continuously. In fact, most of them have to be imported. The incident that you refer to is unknown to me, and I'm sure if I turn to my right and ask the Ministry of Visa or ask the Ministry of VROMI, are they aware of such a request? Now, as far as you mentioned the legal department of government, that's a department that is in need of skilled human resources. In fact, they're scarce worldwide, but it means the person has to be able to have the experience also. If they don't, they can be trained in order to fill positions that are open there. If what you refer to is accurate, I'll invite you to please direct a copy of their request looking for employment in that department to me to be evaluated, and I will be more than gladly to walk through it and to search and seek, which shouldn't be a difficult task, as to how that person can be placed. Of course, there are certain requirements that have to be met. The personality of the person, where they worked before, what incidents, they have no criminal record. Those are standard things, and if they have that, they might be eliminated from the process. But assuming that that's not the case, and this person is indeed qualified and have the qualifications you mentioned, I think there are numerous positions in government and outside of government that can be found for such a person that you described.
I will give you that information as soon as, before you leave. My third question, I think it is Rick. Minister Gibson, I want you to outline something for me. SZV, when they took over the government administrative building, the government administration building on Pawn Island, what were their tasks? Were they supposed to just finish this building, like by putting walls, whatever in the building, all cabling, desks, computers, IT? What is it are they supposed to do before anybody can move in?
Well, and I always tell you that the premise of your question is inaccurate. Your premise was when SZV took over the building. SZV has not taken over the building. The building up to this moment has not been transferred to SZV. The question that you pose has to do with financing of the work that is necessary to complete the building. That, I think you've got to address that question to the Prime Minister or Minister of Visa. As far as the details of that is concerned, I know generally what the budget, the capital budget, is going to be burdened with, and what generally the SZV is going to be investing in the building, and whatever SZV invests in the building would be converted in and reflected in the monthly rent that would be paid to SZV.
Minister Lee, would you mind following up and give us the information that Minister Gibson said that you can probably give regarding the government building, as well as the employee or the person that applied for a job here?
Regarding the person who's applied for a job, I agree with the sentiments from Minister Gibson. I think looking for qualified legal staff is I couldn't see why that would be a difficulty to place within government. So I agree with his sentiments that if you provide the person's information, I believe that person should be able to find a job. Regarding the administration building, I mean, Minister Gibson understands better the financial constructs of it, but my rough understanding of it is that, you know, SZV will be the landlord of the building, the owner of the building, and government becomes the tenant. So SZV is responsible for finishing, as a landlord would be responsible for finishing the structure of the building. Government as tenant would be responsible for the furniture it puts inside, its computers, its software, its servers, those types of things. So like any commercial transaction, SZV would be responsible for finishing the structure. So electricity, lights, parking, those kinds of normal things, and that the tenant would be responsible for its own furnishings and its computers, etc.
Cedric, may I have a follow-up on that?
No, thank you. I'm going to move on. Time is working against us, BB. Thank you very much for your questions. Andrew, you have the floor.
Yeah, Minister Myers, the APS, you was present during the groundbreaking of Phase 1. Of course, Chairman Richards made a request for the southwest side of, he said that the request is already by you. Any update on that?
That the request is already...
The Marie Francie estate, the plantation, remember the...
Yeah,
the southwest side.
Uh-huh.
Remember he said that the businesses there doesn't really fall in line.
Oh,
with
okay.
the
Whose request that the chairman,
Yeah,
Mr. Richard,
APS.
put? I have not seen.
You have not seen
I have not seen that, but I will be dealing with the ministry to have a look at that situation there, because I think more is happening there than what was allowed under the permit that was issued some years back.
Okay. And Minister Lee, coming back to the sex workers, well, now the dancers, how will the ministry control it as far as money changing hands and so on? So, how will will you send in inspectors?
In terms of money changing hands,
Yes.
what do you mean?
You said that you're going to check the policy. You're going to stick to it just being for the dancers.
In other
So
words,
they can't
as Ministry
receive
of-
any money for sexual acts, right?
What I'm saying is, look, that as Ministry of VSA, all we can do is issue labor permits. We cannot and will not issue permits for sex workers. We can only issue permits for exotic dancers or animir mages. Now, the fact that the club provides an environment that is conducive to a particular industry, what the people within the club choose to do between themselves as consenting adults is between themselves, between them, you understand? So in other words, we're not facilitating or partaking or monitoring in that activity. That's between two consenting adults.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Alida, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Cedric. Minister Lee, just to follow up on what my colleague was asking, in the policy, the policy that you outlined earlier, there are two aspects that you highlighted. One, no money should change hands prior to the workers coming to the island. The second part, that their documents, including their passport, should not be taken from them. How then do you police that? Were you going to send in inspectors to say, okay, we came to see if these girls that have permits have their passports in their possession? How are you going to make sure that there's no money changes hands before?
So, again, let's be clear. Why are we adding these points to begin with, right? So from anecdotal evidence, stories, that in the past, what may happen, I'm not saying this is typical, I'm just saying it's a possibility, right? That clubs would send money for girls, in order to fund their travel expenses, to have money to show to immigration, for example, when they come. But then the girls may arrive and find that, oh, you know, either I was misled, it was misrepresented what my what expectations were, or it's simply I just don't want to be here and I want to go home, which is any worker's right to decide, right? So, but then some unethical clubs may say, or again, possibility is there, that they would say, look, before you go home, you need to repay this money, and therefore force you to do things that you're not willing to do. And as a possible way to, let's say, enforce that directive, they would take their travel documents and thereby prohibiting them from actually leaving. And again, this is where you get the human trafficking issue coming up. And so that's why the discussion about, you know, if you can send money became an issue. And that's why we also made it clear that we, because in discussions with some of the clubs, for example, they said you may actually be making the situation worse. In other words, there is a possibility that the girls that would like to come, if they cannot get a plane ticket to come, for example, that they would actually go to loan sharks or something and actually be in worse situation, which is why we've adjusted it slightly and reflects the fact that it cannot be done with the intention of creating financial dependency, which makes him or her vulnerable to perform work that they don't want to do. So in other words, you know, you can't use it as leverage to say you need to now do X when you're not, when you don't want to do that. And again, that's why it also states here that the adult entertainer is free to leave the establishment at any time that they want to, that they cannot be, you know, held restrictively in the clubs, and again, that you can't take their documents. And again, it's important from our perspective, as I mentioned, we only give work permits, which means that, like any other worker, they're entitled to come to the labor office. They're entitled to, if they feel that they're being mistreated by their employer, they can come to the labor office, and it's the labor office's role to protect the worker, as is the case with any other worker.
Thanks again for the even more in-depth this explanation of the policy itself. But my main question is, how do you ensure that it works?
Again, so if for example, it turns out that the club is violating sending workers with the objective of creating a dependency, right? What would happen is a worker comes into the labor office, they make an official complaint, just like any other policy. You know, if a worker's entitled to overtime pay and they don't get paid, a worker comes into the office, they make a complaint, an investigation is made, and a decision made based on what can be gathered.